My remarks this weekend at this conference were about science denial, based on my book with Barbara Hofer. And in our book, we talk about not just science denial, but science doubt, resistance, and denial. So, science denial is actually not that common. It's much more common for people to doubt and resist scientific information. So, looking at that, what are some of the psychological factors that contribute to science doubt, denial, and resistance? Well, we talk about several, and I'll just give you 5. So we talk about cognitive biases. So cognitive biases are just the ways that we think and reason inherently that might make us unable to carefully evaluate science in an unbiased manner. Motivated reasoning. Motivated reasoning is when our motivations help us to reason towards a desired conclusion, but not necessarily an accurate one. We also talk in the book about attitudes and emotions and how attitudes and emotions frame our understanding of science and sometimes frame our understanding of science in a way that is misleading. Another big factor is social identity. We often think about science in terms of how our social group thinks about science. So if there's a particular controversy, we may not align with the scientists, but we may align with people who think like we do in our social or community group. That could be a religious group, it could be a political group, it could be a neighborhood group. And that can be problematic if that group's view is contradictory to what the scientific consensus can be. The last thing that we talked about in our book is epistemic cognition. And this is, how do people think and reason about scientific knowledge? And how do they understand how scientists have come to understand what they do understand and why they don't understand other things? And that leads us to a key issue for this conference this weekend, and that is epistemic trust. Who is it that the public trusts in terms of scientific information? And I would argue that there has been an erosion of trust in experts. I think this is going back decades, but particularly was exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, there's some good reasons. Mistakes were made by the experts because it was a novel coronavirus. They really did not understand exactly what was going on at first, and so it was inevitable that there was some mistakes, some miscommunications, and that actually didn't help, of course, to foment trust. But what happens when people turn away from expertise in a situation like this is then they turn to their in-group, whoever it is they do trust. And we saw this to devastating consequences through the COVID-19 pandemic, as people were taking untested remedies rather than the tested vaccine. So, what can we do about this issue of science doubt, denial, and resistance, and the lack of trust in scientific expertise? Well, we can try to foster in ourselves a scientific attitude, or what Lee McIntyre calls a scientific attitude, which is an openness to new ideas and a willingness to change one's ideas based on new evidence. We can foster that in ourselves. As educators, we can support the development of scientific attitudes, thinking, and reasoning skills among students. As policymakers, we can encourage policymakers to listen to the science and to consider the science in making critical public policy decisions. And as science communicators, we can try to understand some of these points of doubt, resistance, and denial on behalf of the public so that we can better communicate to them what scientists know and what they don't know. And hopefully some of these ideas would help to build back some of the trust in expertise that I think is sorely lacking.